Well, for some people, today is supposedly a day of celebration because it means for the first time you can draw money from your pension without having to change jobs or resign from your job. But of course, parts of this still hugely contentious. For example, SARS will tax you when you draw money from the small pot of your pension. At the same time, wildly different estimates of how many people will withdraw how much money from their smaller pot when you become eligible to do it. And I've seen estimates today ranging from sort of 20 billion rand, I think, to 80 billion rand. Chris Axelson is the Acting Deputy Director General for Tax and Financial Sector Policy at the National Treasury. Chris, good evening to you and thanks for your time. As the National Treasury, do you have an estimate of how many people are going to dip into their smaller pot to take money out of their pensions?
Good evening, Stephen. Thanks for having us. Well, we did provide an estimate in February. We thought around 30 billion in funds would be withdrawn, which would lead to an additional 5 billion in revenue from our side.
Okay, so you're going to be, some of them are much higher than that. My own personal sense, I don't have the numbers to back this up at all, is that so many people have people in their families who are so desperate right now that I'm actually expecting to be quite a high number.
Yes, I suppose from our side, we don't want people to take out as much as they can. This really should only be for emergencies. They might, but we also didn't want to pencil in such a high number that we had very large revenue expectations, and then if we didn't get them, we would miss our revenue estimates. So we were being relatively conservative of that. We did do a lot of consulting with industry on how much they thought would be drawn out as well, and we didn't want to make the amount that you could withdraw too much that it would create liquidity issues in the market either. So we've tried to keep that balance. We've had a relatively conservative amount. If there's more that's withdrawn, we would get a little bit more revenue, but that was not the aim of this reform. But hopefully others will, they'll be able to use it for consumption or reducing debt.
Okay. The fact that you're getting revenue at all, COSATU's calling for changes for this. They suggest lower income workers should not be taxed on their withdrawals. There should be other exemptions. Are you going to give them a hearing? I know you've been taking part in panel discussions and all the rest over the last couple of days, but are you open to that argument?
Well, for the retirement tax system, everything you put in, there was no tax on the amount that was put in. So you got a full upfront tax deduction when you contributed to the fund. There's also no tax within the fund on the investment growth. So there needs to be tax at some point. At the moment, if you resign from your job and you take the whole amount as cash, you are taxed. So we're not changing the point of taxation, because you are taxed currently when you withdraw from your fund before retirement. The only thing we're changing now is that instead of using a tax table, which is cumulative, we are adding it to your income each year. And what this means is that if you have very low income or no income, you will pay much less tax than you would previously. So previously, if you took an amount and you took an amount the next year and the next year, you would start paying 26% on those amounts. Whereas now, up to 95,750 Rand, if your income and withdrawals are below that, you pay no tax. So this is to try and help those who really are in need and they'll face a lower tax burden.
Okay, so you may also, like people who take money out of their pot, be getting some extra revenue in now, but you'll be getting less revenue later. That's how you see it.
Yes, at the moment we get about 12 billion a year from individuals who resign and take their full amount. That's going to slowly go away as you can no longer take that amount that you resign, but it will be replaced by this the amount that you can take from the savings pot and the tax that you will pay on it. If you have a lot of income and you take money from that savings pot, you would expect to be taxed, and that acts as a disincentive for taking it when you don't really need it.
Okay, this is a big reform. Probably the biggest reform in the sector for many, many years. As I understand it, nothing exactly like this has been done in other markets. You would know more about that than I do. Are you still open to a little bit of tweaking, say, in 5 years' time? Because we should be able to work out in 5 years what will happen over the next 30 with this system, if you see what I mean.
Yes, no, I think we're always open. And COSATU have done many very good proposals in the past where we've used some of them. So, we do always look at those proposals. We will engage with them. There's some, lines that government wouldn't want to cross, but there are other areas you say, well, we could provide a little bit more extra flexibility here and there. One of them is if someone has absolutely no income left and they've used all the money from the savings pot, could there be very exceptional circumstances where that person might be allowed some access? That happens in Australia, New Zealand, and other countries. So we will look at these issues as time goes by, and we'll see how the system progresses. It is a very big reform, but there could always be room for improvement.
You started off by suggesting that you do have to tax at some point. I understand that, Sort of. But could you not say that anyone who saves for a pension, it won't be taxed? I mean, that would be a much bigger reform. Obviously, it would cost you some money, but it would encourage a lot more saving in the longer run.
Well, we do have one of those incentives in place already. So if you in the savings pot and all the money you put in the savings pot, if you don't touch it until you retire, you will get 550,000 of that rand amount tax-free. So, that was another big incentive, which a lot of the media hasn't focused on, to say keep it in that savings pot. And if you keep it there until retirement, 550,000 rand is tax-free there.
Chris Axelson, thanks very much indeed. Really appreciate the time. Acting Deputy Director General for Tax and Financial Sector Policy at the National Treasury. Listening to that, someone who believes you should never take money out of your pension, Bruce Cameron, you will probably have heard his voice. He's a consultant on retirement funds, co-author of The Ultimate Guide to Retirement in South Africa. Bruce, good evening to you. You say you should never take money out of your pension. Why not?
Well, to start off with, particularly lower income people who probably be the people who will withdraw the most will end up with a very, very small pension. Already, most union retirement funds, if someone gets 50%, they're very lucky. Now, most retirement funds aim at giving you 75% of your last income. And when I say last income, I mean your last basic pay. That's it excludes allowances and everything else. So a lot of people will get much less than that anyway. And if you draw anything, you're not going to get anywhere near there. So a lot of these people who withdraw money, even if they worked for the full 40 years, will not get a livable pension. But I'm a bit of a cynic when it comes to this, and I think the main reason you see this is, one, the industry welcomes it because it'll have a lot more people saving for retirement and keeping the money there. They won't be able to resign and take the money. There'll be money left over. But the trouble is that by the time they reach retirement and they've withdrawn that, they're not going to have a livable pension. And the other cynical reason for it is that a huge amount goes out to pension funds, out on pensions to the state. Now, if you've got to save a certain amount, you won't qualify for the state pension, but you still won't have enough to live on. And you might not even get anything worth equal to the state pension, which is pretty minimal anyway. So when you say that this was a major change, it wasn't so much the change that came before it, where they basically blocked provident funds. Because what people would do, most union funds or provident funds, the people would just resign, take all their money in cash, and then claim a state pension. They'd spend the money on paying off debts, etc. So now they won't have that. And you're going to be people on low pensions, won't qualify for a state pension, and it's not going to be good for those people.
Do you believe we're laying the ground for a sort of slow-moving disaster 30 years from now?
Yeah, I think so. I think they've limited this to a certain extent. The state, by the way, is also going to benefit because it's going to get extra money in tax rules. People will be paying the penalising tax rate and not as Treasury said, they won't be getting that 550,000 back because they withdrawn it earlier and been taxed fully on it. People also that are not on any tax might suddenly land up being on that tax rate because they withdrawn that money. Because that will, so say you're earning just below the taxable rate, and then you cash in, it pushes you then into a tax rate, and they'll be paying tax on that money anyway on top of it. So it's not just a simple calculation; it works two ways as a result.
Bruce Cameron, thank you very much indeed. A consultant on retirement funds, co-author of The Ultimate Guide to Retirement in South Africa.